What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I take to the airwaves at Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook to talk anything and everything NFL related. And I'm very excited to talk about all of the news that has been going down. It feels like the offseason on a year-to-year basis is so boring, but this time around, it feels like we're being spoon-fed something every week. And I'm very excited to chop it up with, of course, another very special guest that I'm excited to bring on today. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Dan Fetes, I appreciate you taking the time, man. It's going to be a great night.
Yeah, thanks, man. I feel like this has been a couple months in the making. We've been playing some phone tag back and forth and in the DM, so I'm happy to finally get on the show, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course. I know you're a busy guy. You do a lot. And if you don't know Dan, you better get well acquainted. He's a sports reporter with 13 Wham ABC. He's also a part of a Buffalo Bills content creation team with Buffalo Plus. He does it with a couple, I think I can't remember.
Mike and Jenna,
Mike and Jenna.
Yeah,
exactly. So be sure you check out Buffalo Plus down in the description below. I have all of Dan's social media links down there. I have Buffalo Plus down there. Be sure you're checking it out, following him and the team over there. But yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun tonight because there really is a lot to cover, which we're not used to. We're not used to having at this time of the offseason, it feels like, All right, so we're going to hop right into things. The first thing is, of course, we're going to cover some recent news. And this dropped today. Dalvin Cook set to be released by the Vikings. This was kind of in the works. It just was a matter of time. Wasn't sure if they were going to be able to trade him or not. Eventually, it just came to a head, and now he's going to be released. I think that's a Friday, tomorrow.
Yeah.
In terms of how this works for the Bills, where will he end up? What are your thoughts surrounding this whole situation?
Yeah, I was the one last year. I knew the Bills were interested in Christian McCaffrey. I was the one that kind of had one of the first reports on that, according to a source. And it was later, confirmed that Brandon Beane had reached out to Carolina at the time about trying to land Christian McCaffrey. So, look, the Bills have been trying to get the running back position right since Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have gotten here. In Sean McDermott's perfect world, they would be more of an old school style of a football team where they would be a ground and pound and dominate the line of scrimmage and hand the ball off, I believe, 35 times a game if Sean McDermott had his way. And for everybody that says, oh, there's no way they would make this move, I think it's slim, but I would never put it past them because they draft Devin Singletary in the third round. The next year they draft Zach Moss. They've gone out and been rumored with running backs. They then signed James Cook. So it's funny. Whatever you listen to in the media, man, or whatever they say in the media is one thing, but what their actions say is much louder. So if they loved Devin Singletary, then there would have never been a time where they draft Zach Moss. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't love that, then they wouldn't have made a signing during the offseason to add in more running backs. And the way they've done it, and guess what? They added Nyheim Hines. So like this thought that they're set at running back position, I don't necessarily know. I like the moves they've made this offseason. I like the running back they brought in from New England. I can't think of his name right now, but the pieces there I feel are better. Harris, thank you. And I wouldn't count it out. I guess that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't either. Like you said, the actions have always speak louder than words. We saw when we signed Von Miller last year, I don't think I heard a peep about us being in that market. And that came out of nowhere, that humongous bombshell. Want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Patrick, thank you for hopping in. Brandon, thank you for hopping in. Yes, we did sign Harris and Murray. But like you said, man, it really is a smokescreen constantly with this franchise, with this front office. Nobody really knows what's going on behind the scenes. So I wouldn't rule it out either. As far as your opinion goes, would you think it's a good move? Would you do it if you were in Beane's shoes?
I wouldn't, because to me, Dalvin is a running back that is kind of in not the same category, but a similar category as Derrick Henry, like a guy that needs a lot of carries. And for me, it is always, I don't want the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. So, that's why a guy like Harris made a lot of sense to me, because he has some explosiveness along with short yardage success, so that you don't need to give him 25 touches a game. He's used to 8 to 10. And that's why that's the kind of offense that I would like to see personally. I'm more of a spread out style. Let Josh Allen kind of do his thing and hit wide receivers. So I'm very poignant on social media and on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel, the fact of like, just throw the ball. Like first down runs are a waste. Second down runs make me want to, jump off a cliff, and third down runs just really bother me. So I'm more of a let Josh throw it 75 times a game kind of guy.
I think Patrick might be also on the same page with you in this regard. The cap Fugazi. I know you're not a big cap guy. The cap is a myth. The cap can be manipulated. Hey, I'm right there with you. It's real, but it can be bet in any way that you need it to be bet. You can make it work. So if he's not Bill, where's he going?
Miami makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And I think that's a worry. It's kind of like this DeAndre Hopkins news. It's the same boat of like, if he doesn't go to Buffalo, it's fine, but don't let him go to Kansas City and don't let him go in the division. It's kind of what it feels like. So, and that's what was always funny. It was like, whether it was the OBJ stuff or things like that, it was like, it's great because you add that player. It's the bonus is that you keep that good player away from your rival and your competitor. So Miami just seems to be a fit. I know social media, his last post was him walking off the field at Hard Rock Stadium, and he's from Miami and all of these things. So if I had a bet on it, I would assume Miami, but there are teams that will definitely be in the mix. But the life and the position that the NFL is with running backs, it's just not what it used to be, and it kind of, the comparison I'll make it is it's kind of, running backs are kind of like middle linebackers nowadays. There are very few that get the big time deals and the job security. Every other player in those positions kind of gets recycled by 1 and 2 year deals.
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of big names. We're adding Dalvin Cook to an already pretty saturated pool of bigger names from a few years ago, and Zeke, Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette. I mean, now you throw him in the mix, like those guys are going to get signed at some point eventually. So, I mean, we're all kind of assuming that Dalvin Cook is probably going to be not just the best name out of the bunch, but the next sign. But who knows? Because there is still valuable name value talent out there that teams will definitely be interested in, and they'll probably be slightly cheaper because I do think Dalvin's still got a little bit of juice left, whereas those guys,
I agree.
It's very up in the air. You don't know what you're going to get from them. But still, like, I think Miami, if they're in the market for running back, if Dalvin's going to be chasing a little bit extra cash, who knows? Maybe they'll go and bring in a Zeke or a Leonard Fournette or somebody else of that nature. In terms of Dalvin Cook, I think Miami, of course, has to be the front runner just based on what we've seen over the last few hours now. I feel like the Bears make sense. I think if I took a shot in the dark, a lot of cap space. Justin Fields is trying to take that developmental leap, and I think the front office is going to try and make that happen. And they really have an alpha in that backfield as is. It's Khalil Herbert, Donta Foreman. Outside of those two guys, it's kind of a toss-up. Who's going to get a majority of the load? They don't really know yet. And if they have money to burn, I think they wouldn't mind giving an alpha that backfield in Dalvin Cook. So that's my shot in the dark.
Yeah, I like that.
With that whole situation. But the DeAndre Hopkins comparison is perfect. Nobody knows. It could be anybody's game. We don't know who's in the mix. We don't know who's going to end up with him.
The source I talked to said it reminded me, and I was comparing it to a few years ago when it was the DeAndre Hopkins situation. A lot to me was similar to the Zach Ertz situation, which I kept checking in on, and that the Bills were interested in Zach Ertz. They were interested. They were very interested. They really wanted Zach Ertz, but give Brandon Beane credit especially when he makes these moves. It's almost like, especially with Arizona this time around, it's almost like he sets his price and says, hey, look, there's a standing offer that we're willing to give you a 4th round pick. You don't have to accept it right now, but let me know if you ever come back and you think you can get better. That's great. But we value it as a 4th round pick, and that's as high as we're going. And that was kind of the Zach Ertz situation, was that I kept checking in every few weeks. And I'd say, like, are the Bills still interested? They're still interested, but Philly's asking too much. And that Beane wasn't going to budge off of his price. And that's kind of what we saw with DeAndre Hopkins. The Bills weren't the only ones, obviously, that thought the price tag of a 2nd round pick or something like that was too high. Hopkins gets released. Arizona eats $22 million in the salary cap. And Hopkins is now, his last stop or his most recent stop supposedly is in Tennessee, which makes some sense with Vrabel. I'm sure they can offer him way more money. Source I checked in with, I'll say this, is that I asked, does Hopkins want a ring or does he want a big paycheck? And the response that I got was both. To that, I said, that's not great for the Bills because it's with the Bills, it's kind of one or the other. And Brandon Beane ended his press conference availability on Tuesday up at OTAs where he said he's going to keep looking. They don't have a ton of money in the salary cap. He goes, if somebody wants to come here cheap, come on down, which I thought was just chef kiss perfect by Beane to be like, listen, we'd love to have Hopkins. We'd love to add talent. But while I do understand the salary cap and I fully believe in the bottom of my heart the salary cap isn't real, there will be teams that can give more money to Hopkins than the Bills can.
Yeah, I mean, if there's even a doubt in DeAndre's mind about what he wants or if he's being tugged one way or another inside of his own mind, you can kiss our opportunity goodbye. But in terms of us, I mean, it probably means Kansas City is, also being kissed goodbye.
Probably.
So that's also a positive in that regard. But funny you mentioned the Zach Ertz situation, just on a brief tangent, because I was huge on the Zach Ertz train. I am a unfortunate part of the former living group that hated Dawson Knox prior to him, excelling here. And I wanted Zach Ertz like so damn bad. And I remember hearing it, like you said, every so often, it's like they're interested. And based on what Ertz has said now, looking back, apparently the deal was like damn near done. But for one reason or another, it didn't get completed. But I was hard on the Zach Ertz train. I'm not ashamed of it either. I'm very proud to say that I was on that train. But yeah, I mean, it's a perfect comparison to make in this entire scenario. All right, so that's one headline. We'll skip across a couple others as the show goes on. But next, we're going to get into the Q&A segment. And I have 3 questions for you. Some football related, some personal. The first of which being very broad, but what rule would you like to see the NFL remove, fix, or add?
That's a great question. Remove, fix, or add. I don't know how I feel about this special teams moving to college. I understand in the college sense. It'll be interesting to see, to me, how teams build their rosters, because while I understand that, I do joke around as well as that special teams is 1/3 of the game. And there are a lot of guys that, I guess I have a soft spot in my heart for guys like Lorenzo Alexander and some of these guys that really made their living and cut their teeth on special teams. And I think there are rules that can be made, man, that don't remove jobs. And I feel like this is a straight up rule that's eliminating jobs and positions and things like that. So like, to some respects, that kind of bums me out. Like, I'm not going to be one of these people that says like roughing the passer. Like, I get it. Like those rules to me all make sense. And I'm all for safety of players. And I know that's what they're trying to do. And like I said, I'm on the field for these games, man. And like, it blows my mind how ACLs aren't blown on every play and how people are able to pick themselves up after these hits. And it is just car crash after car crash. So I understand and applaud some of that level of, hey, we're trying to do the right thing here, but I wish there was a different way to go about it than taking away careers of some of these special teams guys.
Yeah, I mean, that was, after thinking about it, that wasn't my first thought. But after I thought about it, I'm like, coaches aren't going to give a shit one way or another. If you think you can return the thing, you're sitting your ass down and you're taking a knee and you're getting the ball to 25, and that's that. There's no argument. And not only does it take opportunities away from players, but from coaches too. I mean, if they slowly start to eliminate the special teams unit, I mean, coaches aren't going to be that important because the head coach is going to say, just knee the damn thing. Get us the ball to 25. I mean, they've already taken so many different precautions on special teams as is. That seems to be the angle they continue to take at the game, is trying to find ways with the special teams unit to see how they can make it safer. Now, go ahead.
And it's funny because it's not a rule that I think you're going to watch and go like, what the hell? Because like we are somewhat used to it from the college game where like when college did it, you were like, wait, what the hell's happening? Mm-hmm. And so you kind of got used to it. So like it will make sense in our minds watching games on Sunday because we've seen it so much on Saturdays. It's really that behind the scenes. And again, I just feel for players in that sense from covering the team and getting to know those guys that are on those cusp of, hey, you're the 5th wide receiver, you're the 7th, you're the 6th corner, but you're really good on special teams. And, I think of guys like Matthew Slater and things like that, Hall of Fame careers, Tasker. Like, think about some of these guys that have just also like won the hearts of fans by putting their bodies on the line in special teams. So I guess that's where, again, it's not going to affect the game or the score. You're not going to be like, well, what the hell? But I think if you look at it from a personal side and like the minutia of a team and how it's assembled, I think it's going to be weird.
Yeah, entirely. I remember talking about it a couple of weeks ago, and exactly what you said was brought up. It's, we're going to see it. We're going to think, okay, that's weird. And then like 5 minutes later, we're going to forget it even happened. And then the rule is going to be forgotten that it even exists, just like you said. And, we wouldn't know. Who knows if guys like Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., Tyreek Hill, who knows if they break these rosters? I mean, these guys' first highlights in this league were kicking people in the face or, running around five guys and breaking down the sideline.
Edelman, Welker.
All of these guys, all of them were broken. They broke the ice on special teams. And if they don't get the opportunity there, we might be seeing a lot of hidden gems get overlooked because they're not getting that proper opportunity anymore. So, I mean, it really is a negative in so many more ways than people are kind of taking it for. And it's
and that's the thing. I think fans are okay with it because they do want it to be safer. They do want a safer sport to some respects. But I think obviously the owners vote on some of these decisions, and like unanimously special teams coaches hated it. And I feel like players were like, well, what the hell are we doing now? So like, again, you have the fan side being like, yeah, it's fine. Like, what's the big deal? It's a kickoff. And then you have the people that like their livelihood depends on it. They're like, what the hell? You're just taking away my job. So I understand both sides. It's just for me, like I said, that's just the one that sticks out to me. And I think we'll have to adjust.
Yeah, that was an excellent one. I was thinking not further back, but more broad, but that was something that just happened. And that's probably the best example. I was thinking what's a catch? It seems I
was thinking the push-out rule. Remember when that used to happen?
Yes, I do.
That the ref just had to assume that a player could or couldn't get their feet down. Just bananas.
I mean, the plays that stick out to me when it comes to a catch were, I think it was just last season when Hunter Henry caught the ball. He crossed the goal line against the Vikings, and I think his elbow hit and it jarred the ball loose. I can't exactly remember, but that happened. And then I think it was a couple of weeks prior when the Chiefs were playing the Colts, where Travis Kelce was at the goal line, reached across the plane. A similar play, that was a touchdown, and Hunter Henry's wasn't. And there's just so many examples of, what determines what a catch is. And it seems to all matter based on where a player is on the field. That seems to be very important. And they don't like touch on that. I feel like that needs to be like identified, but it's not.
Yeah. Bonus rule I'd like to change. You got me on a different tangent. Fumbling through the end zone should not be the other team's ball. That's the stupidest rule. I take my answer back. Fumbling through the end zone. If you fumble it anywhere else, you get the ball back. But you fumble it on the 1 yard line and it goes through the end zone, the other team gets the ball back. Nah, screw that.
I wonder where that even came from. Like, what was
no idea.
What was even the thought process? Like, oh, you screwed up that bad, so you don't get the ball. Most of the time when that happens, it's an entire fluke. So it's not even somebody's fault.
Correct. Or every single fumble that goes out of bounds goes to the defense. Like, do it one or the other. Don't just change it at that inch line that if it goes over the pylon, then it's the other way. It's all or nothing with me. I think that's a dumb rule.
Oh, that's a great one. That didn't even cross my mind. That's an excellent one. But they need to start identifying like for the catcher for this rule. Like, it matters. It seems to matter. They just don't really seem to acknowledge that. I don't know. But anyway, the next question I got for you, another kind of broad one, but you have a dark horse MVP candidate, somebody that not a lot of people are talking about, not a fan favorite to win it.
So it'd have to be at a better team. So how about like a Jared Goff?
Okay.
Like a guy that I think the Lions are heading in the right direction, and I think they're playing some really good football, and I think Goff has getting some more and more pieces around him. And I think that that's a team that with every MVP, man, you need that storyline.
Yeah.
And if the Lions were to say make the postseason, I'm not saying you'd win it, but the fact that you're going to look at the quarterback of that team, Justin Fields is another good pick, Pat. I just don't know if the Bears are good enough to win that division. Yeah. I think the Lions are good enough to possibly win that division. And then so I'm thinking, who's the best player on the Lions? Or who's the player that'll get the most attention? And I would go with a Jared Goff player-esque.
That's a good one. Jared Goff, Justin Fields was also somebody that crossed my mind. Whether we like it or not, Deshaun Watson's probably in that conversation, depending on what kind of Deshaun Watson shows up. And nobody's really talking about him. It seems like, of course, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow are front runners. Trevor Lawrence is getting a lot of attention in this regard because it's, bringing in Calvin Ridley. He's going to be getting into his third year now. All of that conversation. I really don't have an answer for this, to be honest with you. I was thinking about it, and I just couldn't really put my thumb on somebody specific. But
T-Law's a good one, too.
T-Law is definitely, and I would say, if you're looking for value, if you're actually going to place a bet on it, I'm not sure what Trevor's at, but I would imagine he's probably like 4th or 5th in line.
Yeah.
Plus 900 or something.
Matt Beauvais, sports director at KBW, good friend of mine, pointed out that like that division is going to be horrendous.
Yeah.
So like Jacksonville is going to make the playoffs. They're going to have a lot of wins. Like that's an interesting, if you wanted to take a long shot, like you said, the dark horse there, Trevor may be the best value.
That's also very important. Schedule is very important too, because
absolutely.
The numbers at the end of the day are what dictate this award. And I was huge going into last year I was huge on Derek Carr. I'm still a big Derek Carr fan. I love the guy to death. I thought with Devontae Adams, he was going to pop off, have a big year, because we saw a lot of good things with Rich Bisaccia after he took over.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't come to fruition. But now he's with the Saints. Everybody's kind of assuming they're going to be a pretty underwhelming team, not very exciting, but they have an easy schedule. I mean, they still have Chris Olave. Hopefully, Michael Thomas can survive more than 3 games.
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara is kind of, in the Dalvin Cook kind of boat. But, there's weapons there. Easy schedule, easy division. I mean, if you really want to get dark with this dark horse, who knows? Derek Carr could somehow end up in this conversation if I'm really, really trying to reach deep in a bag here. But hard to put my finger on anybody. All right, and my final question, I asked this to all my guests, and it's really, really awesome to hear the different experiences that I get brought on the show here. But what is your best / most memorable moment of your content career, or just your career thus far?
Wow, that's a really good question. I got a couple. I was there. I filmed Rex Ryan's truck leaving the Bills facility the day that he got fired.
Wow.
So that was pretty memorable. I remember that was like the first time that like ESPN, like and Fox Sports and everybody like asked for my video. I thought that was pretty cool. The pinned tweet is maybe one of the most stories I'm most proud of. Content wise, it's a story about how back in just before COVID, I was planning on going out to Fireball. Pretty much had everything all set up to go to Fireball High School and kind of get to know where Josh grew up. It didn't end up panning out, obviously, because of COVID, but I was able to kind of hook up with his junior college coach that pretty much explained that Fireball, again, we hear about Fireball and how it's a small town, but to hear it from somebody's words was that there's one stoplight. And then I got to talk to Josh about it, and he laughed and said, well, now there's 2 stoplights. So like, hey, like we're getting there. So like, that was one of a cool story. I think that like one of the first times, like, again, Josh Allen retweeted a story that, I did with him and kind of got to put in some real elbow grease to kind of, hey, this story took months to put together and find the video and to track down everybody. So that was pretty cool. And then it's little shots. I got Josh Allen running off the field last year at Kansas City, handing the ball to a kid. And it's little stuff like that has also been where I sit there and I go, holy cow, that was pretty cool that like I'm there on the field. So there are a couple of those moments, whether it's I was on the field for the snow game in 2017. I was on the field in Houston when they lost in 2019. Just some of those crazy moments where I can say, and I was like, people will say, oh, that game was wild. And I'm able to say I was there and I got video and I filmed the game to show it. So there have been a handful of those games. Kansas City's games have been, memorable and things like that.
That's awesome. Being able to, I feel like the little things too, like you said, probably really stack up. Just being able to see them interact with all the fans and stuff. It's probably really cool to see on a regular basis. Surreal is probably the best word.
Yeah, and again, I never take for granted. Like, it's the best job in the world is being on the sidelines of an NFL game. I don't. And there are people that have you could have front row seats of an NFL game, and it's just different. It's different being that close to players that are that fast. You know, in the snow game, Peterman threw a touchdown to Calvin Benjamin, and I got like caught up in the celebration. And I just remember like being in like as they went over to the crowd, like cheering, and I was like, I'm like kidding around, like I'm in an NFL touchdown celebration. Like little stuff like that, you know, part of it's being there and putting yourself in the right position to get those shots and things like that. And part of it's just like dumb luck. And this is just pretty cool. So that's a cool question. I haven't thought about that much. That's a cool question.
Yeah, it's awesome hearing all the different experiences because I'm pulling people from all over to come on this damn show. So it's really cool to hear all the different types of experiences. I had Peter a couple of weeks ago. He's with Built in Buffalo, and he interned with actually the Patriots, and he was on the field for when the Bills played the Patriots, and he was telling me about how he got to see him in person and videotape him all the time. And I mean, it's just very cool to be able to envision myself through you guys seeing what it's like. But to one up you, I don't know if you were at the damn game against the divisional round game a couple years back. Were you at that game by chance in Kansas City?
I was not at the overtime game.
Yes, I was at that game.
Jenna was there.
Oh my goodness gracious. That was tough. That was a tough one to attend. It was, from a football fan's perspective, it feels great to be able to say I witnessed what is probably the greatest game of all time. Is it crazy to say the greatest game of all time in person?
No, I mean,
it really was, from an entertainment standpoint, unbelievable. My dad got puked on, but that's a whole other story for another day. But
that's the Kansas City experience. I'm all good with Kansas City. On a side note, we've been to Kansas City enough.
Yeah, they definitely. I felt comfortable there. Like it was not a hostile environment. I've only been there once, but for the most part, we were surrounded by Kansas City fans. They were a very nice group of people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No bad blood. It's Kansas City. It's Kansas City.
Exactly. That's how we are at this point. It's just they don't feel like the rivals anymore. I hate the Dolphins. I cannot stand Miami at this point. But anyway, before we get into another tangent, we're going to move on to the next segment. And this is going to be the Hilltop of Hypothesis. And if you're unfamiliar watching, it's essentially where my guest, Dan in this case, brings a take that he is willing to die defending no matter what. Everyone has at least one of these. Let's hear it, Dan.
Yeah, it's no surprise if you follow me on Twitter. It's the salary cap is just not real. And as I've said before, and Jenna says describes the salary cap as malleable. Mike calls it accounting. Whatever you want to call it, it's more fun to say that it's just not real. And I mean that in the sense of like we just had the Bills media golf outing, and I was paired with Matt Perino in my cart, but we were with Brandon Bean, and the joke was that Perino goes, I dare you to tell Bean that the salary cap isn't real. And then we'll have a conversation through the next 3 holes. And I was like, well, to Bean, he has to tell people the salary cap is real. Like that is what general managers do. That is what NFL teams do to tell their fans that they don't like a player. And I will use the example of Tremaine Edmonds. The Bills could have paid Tremaine Edmonds the amount of money that the Chicago Bears did, but they didn't want to. Wanting and can are different things. The Bills could have paid him enough money. They didn't want to. So instead of coming out in the media and saying, yeah, we don't want to pay him that much money, Brandon says, well, the salary cap and, we got to pay some other guys. And it's a great excuse. And teams that don't want to spend money just use that over and over and over again. They use it as a reason to cut players. Like I said, the Arizona Cardinals, if they wanted to keep DeAndre Hopkins, they could. It wasn't a fact of money. It's just a fact of they can cry salary cap and then move on. And for everybody that tells me, the people that tell me, well, you're just putting things down the line and you're just putting things on the line. Like I have put a lot of thought and effort and research into this. The salary cap is real to a certain extent where if your owner is willing to allocate the money, when a contract is signed, they have to put 20% of the guaranteed money into an escrow account. It means they have to put that money off to the side. If you have an owner that is willing to put that money off to the side, you can kind of do whatever you want. And just like we've seen with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, you rework it in a few years. It's the same reason Patrick Mahomes' deal is going to get worked in a few years. And for everybody that said, well, he can't pay $500 million. Spoiler alert. the salary cap's going to go up next year. It's going to go up a lot. Unless there's another global pandemic, the salary cap's going to keep going up. So this thought of people going, well, eventually you're going to have to pay it. Yeah, eventually you will when the salary cap goes up another $50 million, and then you can just keep doing it. So again, I that's why I applaud Brandon Beane for what he's been able to do. And if your owner is able to cut checks, the salary cap is malleable. You can do it whatever you want. And for the expression that I've heard is like, if you think that you understand the salary cap, it's like telling me you can nail smoke to the wall. Like you just can't do it. It is what it is. The salary cap isn't real. And for every time that the Bills say, well, we can't sign somebody, you can. It's just you don't necessarily want to pay that person that much money. So again, the Bills can say they want to pay DeAndre Hopkins $15 million. They can make it work. They only have so much money. How about the Leonard Floyd deal? He's got 3 void years. Yeah. He's got 3 void years. It's pretend years. Like it's unbelievable. So when you said that this topic was a hill you would die on, I will die on the hill that the salary cap is not real.
This was perfect for that take. It's
amazing.
Perfect. And you mentioned the escrow account and everything. So I didn't really understand any of that until I watched, Brett Coleman, his video on the Deshaun Watson. I think it was Lamar Jackson about Lamar, but factoring in Deshaun Watson. And he's talking out about how this escrow account and how they got to front the money and how it gets transferred into this like limbo state for, I don't exactly remember how it all works, but long story short, if the owner can pay it, like you said, it's going to happen. And it's just, that's what I took from that video is if the owner has the money up front, they can do whatever the hell they want. And that's why Cleveland was able to do it because they're Mr. Moneybags over there.
Exactly. And that's the thing is that the salary cap is supposed to even the playing field. In theory, it is supposed to make everybody on the same level playing field. But while all of these owners are billionaires, they are all billionaires in different shapes and sizes. Mm-hmm. Some aren't as liquid as others. Nope. So you have the Browns and Jimmy Haslam who can straight up cut the check for Deshaun Watson, and he can just cut the check. The Cincinnati Bengals owner is not going to be able to cut that size of a check to Joe Burrow. And that's why other owners are pissed because, hey, it's not like he's doing anything nefariously or illegal. He's just saying, hey, this is the rule. And this escrow rule, dude, it goes all the way back to when the league was founded and the thought of we're afraid that owners won't be able to eventually pay their players. So we need to make sure they set money aside so that if things go bad, they can pay the players because we don't want our players not to get paid. And Cincinnati will do the same thing with Joe Burrow. They'll say, salary cap, we got to, it's tough. The salary cap. It's not real. It's not real. It's an excuse that teams like to use to not pay players as much as the players should.
Was it the Bengals or was it the Steelers? Somebody just lost naming rights were changed for a stadium for something similar. I feel like to this. I can't remember if there was.
It's no longer Heinz Field. I know. Was it Heinz? It's like AccuShare.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I think that's because I feel like it was related to this conversation, and I don't remember exactly how. But they just couldn't cut the check. I think is pretty much the bottom line. Naming rights were changed, et cetera, et cetera. This was perfect. I can't wait to cut this one up.
I love this.
I'm right behind you on. I think the best way I think about it is it's very malleable was the word that Jenny uses. I think manipulated, if that's same word. My vocabulary is terrible.
Yeah. Well, it's like Mike was joking around like we all have an allowance or you have how much money that you spend monthly. And then something happens. You're like, well, I want to do that. So you do it. And then next month you may not do something else because of it, but you can make it work. Trust me. You can make it work, especially if your GM's creative and your owner was willing to cut checks.
The Saints have been pushing back so much the Saints are a perfect example of this too.
Well, the Saints, the Piper finally came for the Saints because they sucked.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Your owner is constantly willing to, again, if Drew Brees didn't turn into a pumpkin and not be able to throw a ball over 5 yards, they would continue to do this. They would continue to kind of kick the can down the road and then pay it eventually. But when the quarterback sucks and you need to rebuild, then it's just like, well, now we'll blow it up and now we'll cry salary cap. It's an excuse.
I like it. I can't wait to cut this one up. That's going to be fun.
I love this.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next segment here. This is going to be just another headline because we've been getting a lot lately. And we've kind of talked about it already, but the Bills signed Leonard Floyd. Kind of, to me, at least came out of nowhere. I'm not sure if you kind of heard rumblings about this yourself, but 1 year, $9 million total, $2 million in incentive of that. What are we expecting from Leonard Floyd here? Are we expecting 9-10 sacks? Are we expecting him to lead the team in pressures? What are we thinking here?
Yeah, I think they're signing him. It's funny. He's had 9 sacks, 9.5, and like 10 sacks, 10.5 sacks his last 3 years. And he's done it quietly. Could you imagine a player on the Bills just like rolling out 9.5 sacks and just being like, oh, wow. Like he quietly had 9.5 sacks. Like what he can produce is really impressive. Tons of upside. Again, I love these 1-year prove it deals. Yeah. If he goes off, it's a win-win. He makes a big paycheck next year and the Bills benefit, and hopefully he takes them to, a deep playoff run. So I think this goes back to, you talk about like money talks. We talked about like, oh, like this guy's great. Like this is a little bit of Brandon Beane swallowing his pride and saying, hey, AJ Epinesa, Boogie Basham, like they're just not there. And they may not be who I thought they were going to be. So instead of continuing, and like I said, I've had so many people say, well, what do you think about them this year? And I go, I think of them the same way I've thought about them the last 3 years. Like it's no knock at them. And we're still about a month away from best shape of their life season, but that's coming closely, that you'll hear about every player is coming in the best shape of their life. Yeah. But I just think that this is hey, without Von, we don't want to rush Von back. I think this buys him a little bit of time. And you kind of can rotate now Von, Floyd, and Rousseau, which I think are probably the best edge rushers the Bills have had in quite some time. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, my follow-up question was going to be, does Leonard automatically get slotted into your second best pass rusher role? I would say without question, right? And that's exactly what Brandon Beane's not bringing him in on a 1-year deal like this if that's not the case. And you make a good point. Correct. That's kind of him saying like, yeah, they're not going to be who they thought they were going to be, at least right now. Maybe they probably still have faith, but they realize what's happening here. They want to win. They want to compete. Yep. This is the best way to do it. That's definitely the approach. Think of it the same way Brandon Beane does. And, actions speak louder. You said it earlier. Everything's kind of written on the wall when you think about it. All right, so we'll move right on. Next, we are going to get into the over-under segment. Over-under, pretty much, we're just going to be looking at 2 different teams. Their over-under win totals. You're going to tell me, do you think they're going over? Do you think they're going under? Pretty damn simple. So we're going to start with the first team that I have here, and that's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're set at 8.5 wins. What are we thinking here?
I'll take the over. I think that division's a little weaker than maybe it's led on to believe. I know the Bengals are obviously very good, but I think besides that, I don't know. That's a really good line. I like Kenny Pickett. I like Kenny Pickett. I like what they've got kind of working there. TJ Watt coming back. I don't have a whole lot of thought behind this. I'll just take the over.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, they do have, I think it's like the 20-something strength of schedule. It's not that crazy. And, the divisional
Green
games.
Bay, Arizona.
They're constantly competing in their divisional games, regardless of who they're playing, regardless of how bad they've been. They beat the Bengals in week 1 last year. They beat the Ravens on a game-winning touchdown drive last season as well. They're always competing. And it's just, I was talking about this last week with Jarrett Bailey. We were talking about how the Steelers they're getting to be kind of TJ Watt dependent. We all talk about how quarterback wins, wins aren't a quarterback stat. Wins are kind of becoming a stat for TJ Watt at this point. I think they were like 7-1, 7-2 with him. Yeah. And I think they had 1 win, 1-6 without him last season when he missed a bunch of time. So it's kind of really weighing in the balance if he can stay healthy. But, there's no reason to believe why a team with that type of weaponry, with that type of pedigree and their coaching staff, the defense.
It's the coach, right?
Yeah.
Tomlin's never had a losing season. So you're betting on the side of history if you take the over.
Exactly. And I could not believe that they got to 9 wins last year. I was baffled. I had them at 5 prior to the year. I was telling myself, there's no way in hell they make it to being an over 500 team. And they somehow did it. They went on like a 8-2 streak near the end of the year after their bye. I mean, it was a remarkable year, and there's really been nothing that's happened against them this offseason or that makes you bat an eye. It's always positive. With Pat Pete drafting Joey Porter, they snagged Broderick Jones from the Jets by trading up. You know, they've done everything good. So, I mean, I feel like betting against this would be stupid, despite the fact that whether you think the division's tough or not.
Correct.
You know, they probably got the worst quarterback there, but everything else is still working so well. It's an interesting gamble to me.
Yeah, it's like I said, I guess I would take the over based on coach. Like that's the X factor to me, because it's like when you said the worst quarterback, the first thing I thought was like, I like Kenny Pickett, and then it's like, well, crap, he is the worst quarterback. But I go, they probably have the best coach, Stefanski. Harbaugh, I guess, would be the only one you compare it with. But yeah, I again, you would just be betting on the fact of Mike Tomlin doing what he's done for the last 18 years or whatever.
Yep, and I think that's exactly what these lines makers, they know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. They put this up there. All right, and the second team we got here, our good old friends, the New England Patriots, 7.5 wins. What are we thinking with this bunch here?
My gut would say under, and that's the only thing that has me a little worried about the Patriots this year is the fact that they actually have an offensive coordinator calling their offensive plays, which is a mind-blowing thought to have, instead of a special teams guy and a defensive coach calling the offensive plays, to actually have an offensive guy call the offensive plays. So for as bad as they were last year, they still were frisky enough. They still had enough pieces on that defense to cause some issues with Judon and things like that. So I still think they're still that Belichick tough defense. So I would lean under. My only caveat would be bringing in Bill O'Brien could get Mac Jones back to where he was his rookie year and to kind of erase the memory of Mac Jones's sophomore year with Patricia and Judge. Because I remember talking to Mike Giardi of the NFL Network, and it made me think right back to like when he said that they were going through 7-on-7 Judges calling plays. And then when they went on 11-on-11, that Patricia was calling plays in training camp. And it made me think back to that scene in The Office. I don't know if you watched The Office when you had Jim and somebody else were both the managers. And Jim and Michael were the managers. And then you had Oscar Martinez, and he goes, you know, what ship doesn't have two captains? You know, what country doesn't have two presidents? And they were like, where would Catholicism be without the popes? And it was just that like classic thing of like, if you have two coordinators, you don't have any. So the thought of this is going to be a better Patriots offense just because of Bill O'Brien, but I still don't think it's enough weapons that scare me that he has enough to do with it. So I'll lean under.
Yeah, it's really, I liked Mac Jones a lot. I do like Mac Jones a lot. I think he's a baby back bitch in terms of who he is as a person, but as a quarterback, like I put him kind of in the Kenny Pickett category. I think Kenny Pickett's just in a much more fortunate situation, but they both, I think, have what it takes. They're not flashy. They're not going to outrun anybody. They're not going to stiff arm somebody into the ground, but I think they have enough, and I think they could be solid game managers. It's just a matter of the assistants they have around him, and they lose Jacoby Myers. They bring in Juju Smith-Schuster. They bring in Mike Gesicki. I mean, just not much help here. And Bill O'Brien really is probably, you know, like you said, the only thing that's the saving grace over there. And that it might be enough. I mean, Bill Belichick, we've seen him do magical things. I think he's done a fine job since Tom Brady's left. I feel like everybody gives him, you know, shit because they've been so bad since Brady has left. But I mean, I think his general manager skills have been the reason why that's the case now. I think him as a coach, he makes the most of every player he's got, but I think he doesn't bring in the best of talent, which is you know, kind of giving him the short end. But it has to be under, because then what do you got the Jets and the Patriots, or the Jets and the Dolphins at? I mean, I'm assuming us as Bills fans, we're going to have the Bills over. I think it's 10.5. The Jets and the Dolphins, I think they're both set at 9.5. Not everybody can hit their over in the division. So
yeah, exactly.
It's almost by default that they're stuck going under. But I think I'm right there with you on both sides here. All right. So once again, we'll move right on. We have, I think, roughly three more segments to go. Take out the slides. I need a producer. Moving on to the next segment. This is the Caveman's Advocate segment. And this is as straightforward as it's going to sound. I'm going to present a topic. You're going to choose one side. Even if I don't agree with the other and I agree with you, I'm going to try my damn best to withhold the debate and keep the argument going. And this always requires a lot of research. So I got something here going. I'm ready for where you might go with this. And I picked something that I feel like I might be able to predict. But who knows? Maybe you'll throw a curveball at me. The debate is this. Has Brandon Beane done enough to help Josh Allen this offseason? Been a hot topic lately.
Yeah, and this, to me, it's no. And it's just in the sense of my concern has been one from day one with Gabe Davis. And it has just been the consistency. And for everybody that loved Gabe Davis his rookie year, and everybody thought after his rookie year that he was ready to become a true number 2 wide receiver, I would say that offseason, the Bills signed Emmanuel Sanders. And if they would have thought that Gabe Davis was ready to be the number 2 feature guy, they wouldn't have signed Emmanuel Sanders. And then after Emmanuel Sanders left, this was the first real shot for Gabe to get his full crack at it. And it was inconsistent, which is kind of what we have seen from Gabe. And it was a lot of pressure, I thought, to go from a guy that before that, overtime game, playoff game in Kansas City, he had like 30 catches. And there was just so much love and so much focus on that one game. If you look at this team, if you look at the wide receivers on this team, I know somebody else has ranked them, the wide receiver room, the Bills are about 20th, the guy had from ESPN. And I thought it was very fair. And that worries me because we saw what, especially in the playoffs, what happens is that defenses are able to take away number 1 wide receivers, which is what the Cincinnati Bengals did against Stephon Diggs. And there was nobody else to really go to. And I understand that. I don't know if you knew this, but Gabe Davis had an ankle injury because if you didn't know that, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott remind us every single time that they get in front of a microphone. But nonetheless, the fact of, I still don't think I would have loved for them to trade up and get Jordan Addison. I would have loved somebody like that, another pass catcher. And maybe Dalton Kincaid is part of that. But the track record for rookie tight ends isn't great. So I guess my concern lies in Trent Sherfield seems like a great guy. And this happens every year. A team signs a journeyman wide receiver and you think that they found the steal of the offseason. But if Trent Sherfield was as good as everybody says he is, he wouldn't be on his 3rd team in the last 3 years. So take that with a grain of salt. If Trent Sherfield plays well, that's fine. And so some of these pieces, Deontay Hardy, again, good, but I don't think that it's realistic to expect any of these guys to have 70 catch seasons and 900 yards. So my concern is the pass catching and the targets around Josh Allen. So I would say no.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, that's I would say a pretty common response at this point. It's an even playing field in this regard. But I mean, I think we also have to give credit to Brandon Beane in recognizing that there are still other talent. There's still other talent on this team that is going to be, there's still lemon juice to be squeezed from these lemons. Like Khalil Shakir, for example, they might not have felt the need to bring in another guy to kind of fulfill that slot role because they have Khalil Shakir. I think they'll be able to lean on guys like Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield. They bring in multiple guys instead of maybe just one to kind of fill the niches that I think they're looking for. And I think that is Brandon Beane probably working with Ken Dorsey as well and working with, Josh Allen, just trying to feeling out what is necessary for things to gel the way they need to gel. And I think at the end of the day, as long as I don't want to say the talent per se, but I want to say the skill sets are there per these individuals. And I think Brandon Beane is good at identifying those skill sets. They'll be maximized as long as Ken Dorsey's able to maximize that. And I think bringing in, a guy like Justin Shorter, I'm not sure if you've met with Justin Shorter at all, 5th round pick, 6'4". We've had guys, we had a Duke Williams come in the building. We were kind of hoping he was going to be that big body receiver. didn't really pan out to very much. But, there's always something in the guys that Brandon Beane brings in. I think we're going to be seeing a little bit more Khalil Shakir this year, and I think that's probably where they're putting a lot of their eggs as well. Is like, Khalil's still here, and I think Dawson Knox is going to have a larger role. And with Dalton Kincaid, I would say he's probably, a top 4 pass catcher out of that class. People are saying he's more of a receiver than he is tight end, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I think to me, and I think Brandon Beane would agree, that it's more so about the scheme than it is the talent. I think that's what this offseason said to me was he believes in the regime, but it was the scheme. And I think that's where things are at with this team.
That's fair. And that's a great point in how you play devil's advocate, because I have very little faith in Ken Dorsey. So I guess that goes into part of the question of the scheme. I don't think there's a bigger Brian Daboll fan than me. And I have said it publicly that I respect Brian Daboll and love him more than certain members of my family. I think that guy is an unreal coach. And for everybody that says, oh, Josh Allen got Daboll that job, like Daboll was such a massive part of his development. And the way that those guys and that team spoke about Brian Daboll is just, you don't hear that a lot. And you could have guys that'll say, oh, this coach was great and things like that. But like the way that the players, everybody spoke about Dabes was something I've never heard before. And so again, this thought of, I wasn't a fan of, even before Ken Dorsey was hired, I was like, I don't want to give the keys to this Ferrari that is the Bills offense and Josh Allen to a guy with a learner's permit. And Ken Dorsey never called plays. And you want to know what? Brian Daboll failed his first 5 times being a play caller. I think being an offensive play caller is the hardest job in all of professional sports and coaching. You got 40 seconds to call a play. That's insane. And whether it's a false start and all these things, it is so easy to sit on our couches and say, well, we played Madden, so like that's the wrong play. And I go, it's so easy to critique the play call instead of critiquing the execution of the play. The play call can be correct, the execution can be wrong, and the play can go for a 3-yard loss. But it was the right play call. Mm-hmm. I wanted a guy that had called plays before for 20 years and could come in and keep Josh Allen in those tight reins that I thought Brian Daboll was really good at. And he could get in his face and he could yell at him because they had been through those experiences together. This is kind of like, Allen's buddy is now his dad. Like that's kind of tough. And that's my one thing where you had Daboll being kind of a hard ass on him at times. And we saw that on the sidelines. We saw all of that. And I'm sure that Dorsey was the guy to be like, hey, you're good. You're good. We're great. We got this, man. You and me, we can do this. And now all of a sudden Dorsey has to be the one that tells him what to do. And I think it's a tough dynamic. I think it's a tough situation, obviously for Ken. But that's part of where I feel I'd like more talent to compensate for what I feel like is not the best scheme and of Dorsey.
Yeah. And that's, once again, entirely fair. And you even said it yourself, though. I wanted to kill Brian Daboll the first couple of years against the
Understandable.
Texans. I think it was the Texans game. We see, I think it was Mike Tolbert lined up. I think he was on the right sideline. They were going toward, they're going from, on my television screen, they're going toward the left. I think Mike Tolbert was at the top of the screen. They were in 5 wide. The play broke down, and Josh runs around, heaves it. Who's it going to?
Oh, Pat DeMarco.
Oh, Pat DeMarco. It was Pat DeMarco.
Yeah, the fullback.
Oh my God! And of course,
do you remember that opening drive? Do you remember that opening drive?
No, probably
marched down the field, and that was the John Brown touchdown pass to Allen.
Yes,
into the end zone. I thought right then and there, I go, give Daboll the keys to the city. I go, the first playoff game, in this, it was on. Again, I know what you're saying. And it's funny, looking back at it, I felt like I was Jon Snow, that gif where everybody's running at him. I go, I was just a Daboll defender. I thought the guy, again, he definitely failed, but he was a guy that I just had confidence in that he would figure it out. And don't get me wrong, they were 7-6 back in 2021 and lost to Tampa Bay, and everything felt like the sky was falling. And then they played well in that second half and rattled off some wins. But Yeah, I get it. The Dable criticism is fair. I just don't want all the credit to be solely Josh and not to give any for Dable for developing Josh from a total project to an MVP caliber quarterback.
Yeah, totally. And I think
what a tangent. What a tangent.
What a tangent is right. I was just about to say something to kind of get the train back on track. I was going to say, I think Brandon Beane deserves some credit too in the regards that, the offensive line was a problem. I think Connor McGovern's a guy that you bring in, toughen up depth. David Edwards, the guy's like one concussion away from never playing football again. God bless his soul. But he, good depth as well. They addressed up front where I feel like it's not getting enough credit. And similar to what I was saying about the skill sets and the niches that they're trying to find in these guys, with Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, I don't know how that dynamic's going to work yet with James Cook and Ian Hines, but there's a clear niche and skill set that they were looking for with these guys. You got the bigger bodies, the tougher runners for the short yardage, for the goal line situations, so you don't have to use Josh. And then you got James Cook and Ian Hines for the open field, the wider gaps, trying to hit the sideline. There's a clear niche going on here. Yep. And I think, like I said, credit to Brandon Beane for, I assume, working with Ken Dorsey and Josh Allen and, the offense as a whole to try and find the niche, the skill sets necessary. And whether it pans out is another conversation. But I am done playing devil's advocate because I was biting my tongue that whole time. I couldn't agree more. I mean, genuinely, I am worried about Ken Dorsey for the exact reason you specified. And I was saying it throughout the entire season. It's not. I don't give a shit if they scored the fourth most points in football. I don't care if they average 28 points per game.
Yep.
Ken Dorsey lacked the ability to grab onto Josh and say, get your bearings back. I don't know what that dynamic was between Dable and Josh, but there was something where Dable was able to get Josh back on track when he realized the train was on the runaway. Ken Dorsey was not able to do that. And every great quarterback has that type of presence. Patrick Mahomes has had it with Andy Reid, and he's never not going to have it. And that's why Patrick Mahomes has developed the way he has. And that's why we saw this, what seemed like regression from Josh Allen. It's a complete correlation between that change. And I'm worried about Ken Dorsey. I try to tell myself that I hated Brian Dable, and I got to have faith in Dorsey. But, Dorsey's not a new face around here. Dorsey was the passing game coordinator. Dorsey was the quarterback's coach. He should have this rapport built to some effect. He should know what works, what doesn't work. And it looked like at times they were lost as a group, and that reflects on him.
That was the most infuriating thing. And again, my Dorsey was when I knew Dable was going to get a job. I was like, just don't give it to him. I go, just like it. I go, and again, I was like, it's not this person, but I go, bring in like a Bill Callahan, like a veteran 20-year OC that could tell Josh, you do it this way because I've done it for 20 years and it works. We'll use your skill set in my system and we'll do it. And what was infuriating was when this, again, I know there are so many box score guys that look at the stats and they go, well, Dan, they averaged the same amount of points. They were just as good. Open your eyes. It wasn't. It just was different. Like, have a little bit of football sense. And then after the fact, being like, well, there's learning curves with a first-year offensive coordinator. And it's like, bullshit. This is, you hired Ken to avoid this learning curve because he was here. So if you wanted to hire some OC, if you wanted to hire a quarterback's coach that had a cup of coffee and shook hands with Sean McVay, I'd be like, I get it. You knew there would be some learning curves, but you had this because you thought that you were already starting on second base, and it just didn't work out that way. So that was what was frustrating to me, was all of a sudden it became an excuse. When you hired him, it was supposed to be a pro that he was already in the building, just not at this position. So it's like, I really wish that there would have been a true offensive coordinator. My worst case scenario is this offense. My doomsday scenario is this offense struggles. They let go of Ken Dorsey, and then you have Aaron Kromer become the offensive coordinator. That is that's my doomsday. That's my doomsday scenario.
I don't even want to think that far.
Yep.
I mean, I think my worst case scenario was Ken Dorsey's gone, and then suddenly Josh Allen's onto his third coordinator in 4 years, right? I mean, that alone is bad, and then let alone who comes along could make it that much worse.
Another good point.
And I mean, not in defense of Brandon Beane, to kind of attack and take your side even more. I think Connor McGovern's all right. You know, PFF has him ranked as, I think, like the 65th out of 77 guards. Like, you know, David Edwards, like I said.
Better run blocker, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, David Edwards, I'm not confident he will be impactful for depth. He played 4 games last year, gave up 3 sacks, ton of injury history last season. Will Ken Dorsey utilize Dalton Kincaid? I mean, I thought Dawson Knox was going to pop this year. We didn't see him utilized enough. Now suddenly there's a second tight end in the mix.
Yeah.
We have our worries for good reason. And, you know, long story short, we have no choice but to have faith. But, you know, there's 2 different – we're at a fork in the road, and I'm very terrified of what one of those forks could lead us to.
Yep.
All right, that was a lot, and I was really biting my tongue there. I thought you were gonna say yes. To be completely honest, my whole no was.
I love what he's done defensively. I like what Bean has done defensively. I still think that this is an offensive league, and you just need to outscore teams. So,
I agree entirely. I really appreciate what Brandon Bean has done, because I did harp on him terribly for pass rusher help. Watching.
Yep.
You know, Jerry Hughes and, you know, the group we had a couple of years ago, Chase Mahomes in the backfield, and just watching him do ballerina spins and run beyond the line of scrimmage after 45 seconds. It's like, you know, that was driving me nuts. I want somebody to bring a quarterback to the ground. We bring in Von Miller. Of course, he gets hurt, whatever. But he's still attacking that thought process, because I do think that, you know, an elite pass rush is nearly as equal, and this might be a stretch, but as a quarterback. I mean, a couple of years back, we saw Mahomes get chased around, but actually brought to the ground against the Bucs in a makeshift offensive line, but whatever. Last year, I still firmly believe that if the Eagles' defensive front played anything like they played on a week-to-week basis, they would have beat the Chiefs. Yep. And they still almost beat them, despite the fact that they didn't. So I appreciate that he keeps attacking it, but I'm kind of wishing that we had best of both worlds here. But we'll move on. All right, and that will move us. Oh, we have one more headline. Usually I only have 2. One more headline, because there's been a lot going on. This happened a few days ago. Want to gloss over it quick. Oliver was extended. I think we kind of had the gist down. Long story short, you know, it's a deal that everybody was like, what the hell? Why are we giving him so much money? And then it's broken down. You realize that the projection is he'll be around the 20th paid interior defensive lineman when it's all said and done. The dust settles. You're kind of banking on the fact that he pops. If he doesn't pop, then you have an above-average interior guy for pretty moderate, relatively team-friendly contract at the end of the day. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this, if they're any different?
Ed kind of had the Bills over a barrel. They didn't have a defensive tackle under contract after this year.
True.
So Ed kind of had them in a rock and a hard place. So Ed gets his money. The Bills hope he plays well. And if you like the Leonard Floyd signing, you have to like this signing.
Yep.
They are, they go hand in hand. So you can't say, I like the Leonard Floyd signing, I don't like the Ed Oliver extension, because you don't get one without the other. So we have seen Ed be as dominant as ever. Pretty much anytime they play on Thanksgiving, he rises to the occasion. He has that flash. Unfortunately, expectations come along with being a 9th overall pick. But I like the move because I think that they value the position. He did what, he's dealing with a lot of injuries last year. He talked about how he also was, a father and just mentally exhausted at times last year, but he still played at a decent level, probably not as good as he played in 2021. Yeah. But I think you have to look at the big picture, especially when you look at, extending players that, you draft, develop, resign, like Brandon Bean likes to do. So I'm okay with it. I think the move makes sense. Obviously it frees up money this year to make the Floyd signing. So I'm a big Ed fan. I love his personality. He's probably up there with Trey White, that when you get him going and you're not talking necessarily X's and O's after a game, but you're talking about energy, emotion. You can listen to him talk for hours. So I'm a fan of his personally, one of my favorite guys to talk to in the locker room. So I like the move. Makes sense. A deal that Bills had to make, and Ed gets paid, and I'm happy for that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, he's been a fan favorite for a couple of years now. Holy crap. He's been a fan favorite for a couple of years now. I'm glad he does get his paycheck. Let's just hope that it does come to fruition what we believe he could be. My biggest thing is as long as there's bigger bodies with him, I think he'll always be good at worst. As long as he's got the size around him, he'll always be more than serviceable. Just be happy for a hometown guy, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we're on to our last segment here. And this is the most, at least to me, the most anticipated segment of the show. And this is the Caveman's Quiz Game. So the Caveman's Quiz Game works like this. Where's my banner? Here are the rules. So you're going to get 8 questions tossed at you, 2 easy, 2 medium, 2 hard, 1 impossible question, and then 1 wager question, which works like Final Jeopardy. If you get if you get both easy questions right, both medium right, or both hard right, you get a bonus. So easy equals 10, medium equals 20, hard equals 30. So if you get both easy right, you get an extra 10. For medium, same thing. For hard, same thing. And then for wager, we will spin a wheel to determine the category. And then from there, you'll be able to determine how much you want to wager. Here's the leaderboard. Only been 3 episodes. You're the 4th. And this is what it's looking like. Jarrett came on and got the hard. I think he got 1 hard question, 1 impossible, which Peter or Justice were not able to do. And it really vaulted him forward. And then he got the wager correct. So he killed it, as you can see, with 200 points.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
Nervous.
Nervous? Don't be nervous. I've had people come on. I ran this last offseason. People came on. They got 0 a couple times. So you wouldn't be the first if you, you somehow ended up with that score.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's get into the first question. The first easy question is going to be this. Where did Sam Darnold sign this offseason?
I have not Atlanta. It's the Southern team. Saints.
That was Derek Carr. It was the 49ers. He signed with San Francisco.
Wow. Yeah, totally.
Yes, he did sign with San Francisco. He is.
I wanted the Bills to sign him. That's why I totally blacked out once he signed somewhere else.
Yeah, he was he's apparently in the conversation for being their starter week 1. Wow. That team is in an interesting scenario, but no worries. The next question is going to be this. Who won the MVP award last season?
Don't overthink this. It was Jalen Hurts.
It was Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes won the MVP award last season. That's all right. You overthought it just a little bit. Jalen Hurts was the runner-up, but no worries. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions left. And if my math is correct, you can still get up there.
Okay.
All right. So we'll move on to the first medium question. We have, who was the last non-wide receiver to win Offensive Player of the Year?
Last non-wide receiver. Who was the last non-wide receiver to win Offensive Player of the Year?
Oh, wait, I might have to hold on.
So it wasn't a wide receiver. It's an Offensive Player of the Year. I'm getting thrown off. So it wasn't a wide receiver.
Wasn't a wide receiver.
To win Offensive Player of the Year. Is it Mahomes?
It's not. It was Derrick Henry in 2020. It went Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson. No, Cooper Kupp. No, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Derrick Henry. I'm sorry. 2022 was Justin Jefferson. 2021 was Cooper Kupp. 2020 was Derrick Henry. Mahomes hasn't won. Mahomes won it in 18.
Okay.
That was when Mahomes won it. And then it's been non-quarterbacks ever since. I, for a second, looked at that question. I'm like, wait, was that supposed to say non-quarterbacks? Yeah. I'm like, hold on. But no, that was what I intended it to be.
This is fun.
But yes.
I just never
said it. No worries. You still got 5 questions if my math serves me correct. Your second medium question is going to be this. How many teams hired a new head coach this offseason? No time limit, by the way. So take your time thinking.
5.
You are correct. It is 5. The 5 were Carolina, Indianapolis, Arizona, Denver, and Houston. So you get on the board.
We're back. We're on the board.
We're on the board now with 20 points. And it kickstarts. You just needed to open the floodgates. That's all it needs.
Yeah, that's it.
So you got 20 points moving into the hard category. And the first hard question is going to be this. What city has hosted the most Super Bowls?
Miami.
You are right. It is Miami. Miami has hosted 10 Super Bowls so far. Or is it? Yep,
we're back. I just had to see the ball go in the hoop. I just had to see it go in.
Just had to feel I played hockey. Just got to feel the puck. Feel the first shot. And now you're on a roll. So now you felt it. And now you're up to 50 points, 2 for 2 in the last 2. If you get the second hard answer right, you get a bonus. So this is a huge opportunity here for you. The next hard question is this, and it requires a picture. I have not done a picture question yet, so bear with me. Who is this? Hold on. The circled human being. This was taken in 2021. That's your hint.
Is it the Ohio State running back? Ohio State running back. See it. He played somewhere else too. I don't know. It starts with a C. Does his name start with a C? I don't know.
It's Trey Sermon. You were close. He did go to 2 different places.
He was the Ohio State guy.
He went to Oklahoma and Ohio State. You had every clue about the guy's whole life except his name. And CS, you were pretty much there with it. Trey Sermon.
That was awesome.
Is the running back. Oh man, you had everything except for his name. Patrick got it. Wow.
It looked like a
Sermon. Hasty. Was Hasty ever a 40? Was Hasty a 49?
Fuck.
I don't remember that.
That's great.
But yeah, Trey Sermon is your answer. Now I got to revert back. Oh God, I really need to hire somebody or something. Okay. So you are at 50 points, moving into the impossible questions. You have room to work with here.
Yeah.
You get this right, you're at 100, and then you get the wager right, you can tie Jared. Yeah. So there's a lot of hope to be had here. So move on to the impossible question. It is going to be this. This team in 1992 made history for being that's supposed to say only, for being the only team in NFL history to make the playoffs after starting 0-4. What team was it? I can't believe I have a typo. I can't believe it.
Eagles?
It was not Philadelphia. It was the San Diego Chargers.
Wouldn't have
had started off 0-4. I would never have gotten.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I always tell my guests, like, if I were in your shoes, I would blow this.
That's a really good question.
Good. I'm glad. I actually take pride in how I put.
That's fair. Like, that's a fair impossible question. There's only one team. You said that's me.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking a shot in the dark. You have a 1 out of 32 chance.
Yeah.
I mean,
is that or Minnesota? So I'm glad I didn't. Yeah.
I'm glad you say that because when I first started the show, I was making the questions myself and trying to determine the difficulty using my own brain. And obviously, there's a lot of different judgment differences with how that would happen. And so now I put together a spreadsheet. I send it out to my social medias, and they determine how difficult the question was. So
yeah, I like that.
It's worked out. All right, so you're going into the wager with 50 total points, and we're going to spin the wheel to help you feel out how much you want to put down. So let's share my screen. We're going to go over to the wheel here. We're going to figure it out. So we have stats, draft, history, awards, transactions, and miscellaneous, which you'll know what that means when we get there. We're spinning the wheel. What are we going to end up with? Oh Oh, you almost had it. Transactions, it looks like it's going to be. So trades, cuts, signings, transactions.
All right.
Speaks for itself. So how confident you feeling? How many points you want to wager here? Here's a scoreboard reminder.
20.
Terry.
Yeah, I was say I got 50.
Uh-huh.
So 10. I want to do 10.
All right.
Like,
he's going
so I go
down.
to second place. Yeah.
All right. So you do have 50 if you did 10. Okay, so you want to take the lead if you get it right.
I could go to second, or I'll at least go to third.
Yes. Okay.
That's my thought.
All right. So we have the wager question. It is the transactions question. It is going to be this. Who is the former Colts wide receiver that signed with the Giants this offseason?
Former Colt. There's only two that I can think of. I don't think former Colt. All right, it's not Pittman because I'm pretty sure he's still on the Colts. And the only other former Colt that I would imagine was free to sign didn't play last year. T.Y. didn't play last year. Screw it. T.Y. Hilton.
It was not T.Y. Hilton. I don't think he signed this offseason. I guess he was with Dallas, and I don't know where he ended up going.
Yeah.
But it was Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell was signed.
That was tough.
He was drafted by Indianapolis. He had injury issues, then gets released, and now he's with New York. But hey, you still end up with 40 points. That puts you in third place, just where you planned on potentially ending up. So, hey, you know what? Things worked out in the end. And that was fun. I hope you enjoyed the Dance quiz game. But otherwise, Dan, that's really all I got for us tonight. Any closing thoughts? Any last opinions you want to throw out there to the world?
No, I appreciate having me on. This was a lot of fun. Done quite a bit of these. This was the first one with trivia and the host playing devil's advocate. So I really appreciate it, man. Keep in touch.
Of course, man. I once again appreciate you for taking the time. I know you're a busy man, so this means a lot that you were able to work time out.
Absolutely, man.
And like you said, we were playing a little bit of tag in the DM. So I appreciate you keeping in touch and keeping up with it. So as always, guys, if you enjoyed, be sure you're checking out Dan Buffalo Plus. All the social media is down in the description below. Follow it all over there. And as always, if you enjoyed, my socials are all down there too. So go check it out on the description. And as always, if you guys enjoyed, I will see you next week, Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Go Bills.